Flask supports multiple databases by using the native library. Like for MySQL, we can use the library called MySQL. For SQLite 3, we have another library called SQLite 3. Those are the connectors that we can use to connect a database to our application. However, we are going to use a Flask extension, which is basically going to be an ORM. Let me show you which one. It's called flask-sqlalchemy. So we are going to use this flask-sqlalchemy, which supports multiple relational database systems, and it provides a powerful object relational mapping to help us with SQL queries. So let's get back to the editor and figure out how we can implement this and use in our project. The very first thing that we need to do is stop the server and install the flask-sqlalchemy extension. Make sure you are inside the virtual environment. Here it is installed. Now let's create a new Flask application here. We have named it app.py just because we are going to create a simple to-do application to implement flask-sqlalchemy and the features it offers. So let's start by importing Flask. Here I have imported all the necessary things that we are going to need from Flask. Now let's import the flask-sqlalchemy. Here we have created the app. Now we are going to set the configuration values so that our app can communicate with the database. So here we have added two configuration values. The first one is flask-sqlalchemy database URI. This one is going to be in the format SQLite : /todo.sqlite3. So basically what we are going to do, we are going to create a SQLite database, which is going to be the version of SQLite 3. Now we are going to initialize the flask-sqlalchemy constructor. Now we are ready to use this DB to perform some transactions on the database. So let's start by creating our database structure or table structure that we are going to use. Here in our case, we are going to create a to-do list that will contain multiple tasks, and each task will have a status. As I have told you earlier that it's a kind of ORM, that means object relational mapping. So what we are going to do is, instead of writing SQL query to create a table, we are going to use ORM and create a class and that class is going to work as a table structure in SQL. So let's start and create a class called todo. So that's it about our table structure. We are going to have three fields. The first one is ID, which is going to be an integer field, and the primary key is set to true. The next one is task, which is of type string and can contain maximum 150 characters. And finally, the last one is of type boolean, and by default we set the value to false, because whenever someone is creating a task, that will be in pending state by default. Now let's move to the next part. We have set the data access object here. It can access the task and status of an object. Now let's move to the next part and create our routes. Now everything is ready to be used. The next thing that we need to do is execute all of this we have written here. So in order to do this, we are going to place it inside the condition block. Here you can see we have executed the createAll method on DB. So what this is going to do is it's going to execute this class and create the table for us. Now before we run the program, we need to fix two things. The first one is we need to convert it to flask-sqlalchemy, and this default false will be used as a second parameter inside the column method. Let's save this. And now if we execute the code, you can see a todo.sqlite3 database is added here in the root level of our folder. However, it is showing some sort of wording that flask-sqlalchemy track modifications add significant overhead and will be disabled by default in the future. You don't need to worry about these things, that in production you're basically going to use another RDBMS like MySQL or Oracle DB. For now, you can use a tool like DB browser for SQLite, and open the database from here. And once you're inside, you can see it contains a table called to-dos. And this to-dos table has 3 fields: to-do ID, which is a primary key of this table, and task and status. So this is the way to implement database queries by using the SQLAlchemy Flask extension.